I muted you out. And so I'm keeping everybody muted and we're keeping everybody off video. Normally we would have done this as a webinar, but we had to do this last minute and I wanted to make sure we had an easy link for everybody to follow. So we didn't do it that way. That being said, we've got a lot of people logging in. So guys, keep those microphones and those videos turned off. And we're going to tell you exactly what you need to do, because here's the deal. It is a major change in the marketplace right now, the NAR settlement. And by the way, we're going to talk about, is this even official yet? And what should we do? And what's likely to happen next? And so I've got with me Saul. And by the way, guys, again, turn those videos off. We're going to keep the videos and microphones off, guys, except for Saul and I. All right, hold on one second. There we go. All right. So Saul, talk to us really quick, brother. You're the current president of the San Diego Association of, excuse me, of the San Diego MLS, and you've got a long history of involvement with the National Association of Realtors. I mean, come on, let's face it, man. You like, if Moses came down from the mount with the stone plates, Saul came down from the mount with NAR and with pretty much everything that this industry has to thank guys like Saul for over the years. Because let me tell you something, without Saul, a lot of us wouldn't be here today. And so that being said, Saul, welcome. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with us today. I don't know how many we have on Facebook. And by the way, if you guys could all do me a favor and also be following this on Facebook and maybe put your comments in here, and we'll be able to share your comments to Facebook. I'd love it if you'd put them in there as well so that we can get as much engagement as possible. But Saul, talk to us about this settlement. So NAR has this lawsuit. We just had all these lawsuits come up with, and we're talking about one lawsuit in particular, but there's been a lot of follow-on lawsuits. And specifically, they're complaining about what they perceive as a violation by the Association of Realtors and real estate agents in general, that we have violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. So first of all, give us your take on that, and then let's you and I talk about what just happened and where we go from here.
Yeah, sure, Michael. Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm glad that a lot of people are interested in this. I've been beating the drum for years. I'm currently actually the CEO of a multiple listing service, but this has been of interest to me as a real estate practitioner for years and years. As a matter of fact, when agency disclosure first reared its head, and I might talk a little bit about that, back in 1988, and in 1991, I actually wrote a course on, you can see that, how to list buyers. Right, because in 1990,
dude, I love that you're pounding that drum too, because man, I've been telling people forever they need to be getting buyer agency agreement signed, and it seems like few have listened. So keep going.
And so here's what we have. First of all, you've heard this before, and Michael, you're an advocate of this, I know, and that is knowledge is power. Right, knowledge is power. You need to know about this. You need to be able to talk about this. You're seeing things. Look at the number of people that are here. We're seeing people talking about this proposed settlement at this point. Proposed settlement. We see people talking about this on in social media. And so first important point for me is that social media is full of people who are not always right, but never in doubt. Not always right, but never in doubt. And so here we are right after a proposed settlement, and you've got all kinds of opinions and all kinds of people telling us what is right and what is wrong and what you can do and what you can't do. And I got to tell you, I believe I'm an expert in this area, and I haven't finished the 108-page settlement agreement because it just came out yesterday. And I don't know many people that have read this settlement agreement. And then there's a 5-page summary and another 4-page Q&A. And so first thing I think that people need to do, if you're really interested in this, and you should be, because this is a paradigm shift, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute, you need to read this stuff.
So Saul, I'm going to differentiate you right there,
everybody else if you do.
Saul, real quick, I'm going to pause you right there. What I want you to do is, Saul, if you could send me a copy of that, what we're going to do is we're going to post that on the Club Wealth website. So you'll be able to go to clubwealth.com/settlement. clubwealth.com/settlement. Give us a couple hours to get that posted, but we'll get that posted for y'all so that you can read it there. Because Saul, I agree with you. And by the way, if we can take this video, Tara, we'll get this video uploaded to the website there as well. But Saul, you're right. People need to read this settlement. And I want to key in on one word, Saul. And I think that this is a word that everybody is missing in all this. Proposed. This is a proposed settlement. The judge has not signed off on it yet. This is something that NAR and the opposing side have tentatively agreed on, that the judge must first sign off on before it becomes an actual settlement. Is that correct?
That's right. This proposed settlement. Now, having said that, I got to believe that a lot of the agree what people have agreed on in the proposed settlement is going to come to pass. Hey, Austin.
Good morning.
Right. So it is proposed, but that's a good thing at this point. It gives people a chance to prepare because this is a paradigm shift. And you talked about it. And what we're talking about is not change. We're talking about fundamental change. And so here's the questions you have to ask yourself when you're confronting fundamental change. And the first question is, what's currently possible in your business? And if it were impossible, it would fundamentally change the way you do business. What's currently possible, and if it were impossible, it would fundamentally change the way you do business. The other side of that question was currently impossible, and if it were possible, it would fundamentally change the way you do business. Now, everybody's used to doing business a certain way in real estate, and they do it through MLS, and this is an important point. What is an MLS? It's a number of things, but primarily, and if you look at the bylaws of MLSs, primarily, an MLS is a unilateral offer of compensation. That's what it is. And so what that means is you only need one contract that commits somebody to pay a commission. And then if you join the MLS, you don't need a contract to guarantee commission because you're a member of the MLS, and the MLS is an offer of compensation. So if I take a listing, then I get a contract with the seller, and I get the seller to agree to pay a commission, then I can split my commission through the MLS with any other member of the MLS. And so if you join the MLS, you could be a brand new agent. You just happen to sit on an open house today. You got somebody who walks in, they're interested. You write up an offer. You don't have no experience, but you can earn the same thing as somebody who has 20 years experience because of the MLS. And what the Department of Justice has said, and by the way, this is an old argument for the Department of Justice. They've been after organized real estate for over 40 years. Probably 50 years. I've been licensed for 48 years, and I've been dealing with this and looking at this and paying attention to this for years. And here's another kind of a side point. Realtors always, and rightly so, are afraid to talk about commissions and antitrust, huh? You ever been in a discussion and somebody mentions commissions and people say, whoa, you can't talk about commissions, antitrust. And so that's what this is. This is about antitrust. This is about what realtors are deathly afraid of, antitrust. And what the Department of, and people will disagree. Well, there's no collusion. Well, I don't care what you think. I'm telling you what the Department of Justice thinks, right? Oh, it's the attorneys, they're worse than what, yeah, it's all just what drama around reality. The fact is the Department of Justice, the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Reserve, the United States government has been after the organized real estate, and I can provide you with documents over many years. They've been after us, right? So now,
okay, hold on. I got to stop you right there, Saul, because I think that people are missing the real why behind all this, right? And look, I don't want to get all political on everybody. I'm not, I don't care if you're conservative, liberal. I don't care what your religious backgrounds are. I don't give a rip about any of that, right? Really, yeah, I've told this to people for years. All I care about is, are we going to be nice to each other? Can we make money together? Can I help you in some way? That's all I care about. That being said, let's call it what it is. There's a side of the political spectrum that believes in what I'm just going to call it socialism. I think that, you can call it all kinds of different things, but at the end of the day, there is a movement in America to create an environment where independent business, where independent thought, where independent opportunity does not exist, and where it's, everybody is treated as one and the same. And I'm telling you right now, guys, that group of individuals, that part of our government is working very, very hard to change the opportunity for you as a real estate agent. They do not want you making the kind of money that you make. They want to reduce commissions. Now, I don't think that this is going to reduce commissions for the best agents. I think that it is going to mean a lot of agents are going to get out of the business. I think that it's going to make it difficult for agents that don't know how to negotiate, that don't know how to get a buyer agency agreement signed, that don't take matters into their own hands. But I think just like the travel industry, where you had Orbitz and Travelocity and all these companies come out that people thought were going to do away with the entire travel industry. Guess what? The travel industry is not gone. What we have is now we have fewer travel agents that do more business each, and they each make a lot. I should say the good ones make a ton of money right now. Why are they able to make so much money? Because they have learned to pivot and they know how to negotiate. They know how to deliver the type of world-class service their clients expect, and that's where we need to go as an industry. Saul, keep going.
Yeah, so I think for most, and I would say most people in real estate, this is going to require a change in the way they do business. And you're right, some people are not going to survive the change,
That's
right?
right.
And the major change revolves, and on the political side, all I would say to that, and you and I had a little discussion about this last night, is remember this thing spans over 40 years. So you've had different political parties in power over this period of time. It's almost not party related, right? There's something else going on here. But what they're after and have been after is the change in the way an MLS works. So I have to give you a little history, and I think again, knowledge is power. Your buyers and sellers are going to hear about this. They're going to have questions about this. They're going to want to know about this. And one of the ways to build trust and confidence in a sales relationship is to demonstrate expertise. And I guarantee you that most of the people that you're competing with don't have a clue about this. They have opinions, but they don't have a clue about what's really going on. So the more you know about what's
Right.
really going on, as a matter of fact, you could even provide, we talk about these documents, Michael, I'd make these documents available to my customers, to my
Yes,
clients, right? Just make them available. Because why? Because nobody else is doing it.
that's right.
And so you want to be able to take advantage of this opportunity that is actually here because of the press that the industry is going to get.
So stop right there. I got to jump in on this, Saul. Guys, I want you to write this down. Seriously, write this right down right now. We've had this conversation when COVID hit. We had this conversation back when the Great Recession hit. We had this conversation here this last year as the market shifted. Write this down. Where there's chaos, there's opportunity. Where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And let me tell you something, there's chaos in the industry right now, and it's getting bigger. And even though this settlement, this proposed settlement is not official yet, it is likely to get approved. This is likely to become law. And we've been saying this we didn't know if it was going to take 2 or 5 years. We didn't know how long this was going to hang up in the courts. But what I've been telling people and what Saul's been telling people forever, and by the way, we're going to be joined by Mike Benier here in a little bit as well, I think in about a half hour. But guys, I want you to understand that we've been saying forever exactly what's happening right now. This is going to hit. It's going to become law nationwide that you're going to be required to use buyer agency agreements. It is going to be the best thing that ever happened to some of you. It is going to be the best thing that happened to this industry in a long time. Why? Because it's going to raise the bar of professionalism. And I know these guys think it's going to mean a reduction in commissions, but for you smart agents, for those of you that are listening, especially for those of you that are coaching with Club Wealth, let me just tell you something. We're going to teach you how to make sure that this means not a reduction of, but an increase in your commissions. Why? Because they're going to be looking for more professional agents. The consumer is going to get more educated on this, and the weak agents are going to go away, and that's going to open up the door for strong agents like you to make even more than you've ever made before. Go ahead, Saul.
Yeah, and you're going to have to be able to make the case, and that's the key.
That's right.
MLS actually supported inefficiency, right? You didn't have to make the case on the buy side. All you had to do is show property.
Yep.
Now you're going to have to make the case. And so let me talk a little bit about change before. MLS hasn't always been an offer of compensation. Prior to 1996, it was an offer of subagency. And so MLS changed dramatically when agency disclosure came into the picture in the mid 1980s. The structure of MLS was we all represented the seller, believe it or not, and we didn't even have to tell the buyer that. And then with agency disclosure, we had to start to tell the buyer. So the MLS model rules, and this is an important point. MLSs typically, most of them, the ones covered by this settlement, they follow the model rules of NAR, the National Association of Realtors. The National Association of Realtors doesn't have an MLS, but what it does is it creates best practices standards for an MLS and then goes out and says, look, to insurance companies, we want insurance for antitrust for our MLSs. And if you're an MLS owned by an association of realtors and you follow the rules promulgated by NAR, then you're covered by their insurance. So NAR provides this umbrella, this protection for MLSs. It doesn't have an MLS.
Okay, so let's stop right there because I think you're bringing up a very good point, Saul. This settlement, this proposed settlement, NAR, one of the things that they did, and there's some confusion on this, and guys, I really want you to listen carefully to this part. because there's some confusion as to what did this settlement actually accomplish for real estate agents at large. So one of the things that NAR accomplished with the settlement, so remember, and by the way, I'm turning everybody's cameras off. Patrick, I'm going to stop that video for you. There you go. Oh, we keep coming back. And Tara, we can see you now. I'm taking you off video too. I you're as cute as you are. All right. Love you, sweetheart. All right. So check this out. Oh my gosh, guys, keep those videos off. I'm going to keep the videos off, guys. There we go. Thank you. All right. Now, that being said, here's what they said. Essentially, it's part of something. First, we got to understand this big lawsuit came out. Hey, we're going to go after him for, billions of dollars. And then the NAR said, hold on a second. We're going to fight this tooth and nail. We're going to fight all the way. And I think a lot of people thought that NAR was completely asleep at the wheel. We had a lot of criticism thrown toward NAR from agents thinking that they were completely asleep at the wheel on this. And I think there's an argument to be made that they were actually playing the long game. I think there's an argument to be made that the association was a lot smarter than people are giving them credit for, because instead of just continuing to fight this down the road, what they've done is they've negotiated a settlement. Instead of it being billions, it's like 400 and some odd million. And it's so basically what they did was they said, look, you can fight us. We're going to continue to fight this long term, or we'll just make you a little settlement right now. And 400 and some odd million dollars is not that much. I mean, it's not in the grand scheme of things in comparison. And they said, hey, we're just going to make you a settlement. But as part of this settlement, all of our members, all of the Association of Realtors members. Now, I love it. You've seen a lot of people bail out of the association here recently. And don't get me wrong, I've not necessarily been the biggest cheerleader for the association throughout my career either. I'm certainly, not in love with some of the stuff that's gone on in the back office back there, if you know what I mean. And there's been certain things that I don't agree with the association on. But I will say this. By settling this, what they have done is they've said, anybody who's an Association of Realtors member, and I want to say it was prior to 2022, Saul, correct me if I'm wrong on that number, but I believe it was prior to 2022, anybody that was a member of the Association of Realtors during that time, that no other lawsuits, no what they call fall-on lawsuits or follow-on lawsuits, nobody subsequent to this lawsuit can sue those agents for this antitrust violation as long as they were a member of the association during that period of time. So those of you that belong to the association, you guys just got a huge victory. Am I right about this, Saul?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I'm an advocate for the National Association of Realtors. I've been a realtor member for over 40 years, right? So, and I believe in many of the things that it does. And there's some things it does I don't agree with, obviously, but I'm an advocate. And I think this was the smartest thing that they could do at this point. So what does it do? So the MLS is an offer of compensation. That's a rule that is in the model rules of the National Association of Realtors. Department of Justice says as long as you got that rule, then buyers don't really get a chance to, now, right or wrong, buyers don't really get a chance to negotiate commissions. So NAR, here's what we want you to do. And we're suing you for damages because buyers shouldn't have had to pay all these commissions over the years. And so NAR has agreed to change the MLS by pulling out of the model rules. And if it pulls it out of the model rules, it pulls it out of all of the other local association MLS rules. The MLS is no longer going to be an offer of compensation, and you will not be able, as a listing agent, you will not be able to offer commissions through the MLS. Now, you will be able to offer commissions off the MLS for the seller, and the seller will be able to, but through the MLS, you will not be able to offer compensation. And that's a key point because, and then one other thing that makes it really important is NAR is going to require, the MLS is going to require that you have a contract, a written contract with a buyer now before you show a property. But I want to add one thing, Michael, before I let you jump in, and that is I'm a California Association of Realtors director. Yeah. And at the last meeting about 3 weeks ago in Monterey, the directors of the California Association of Realtors voted to have CAR, that's the California Association of Realtors, sponsor legislation. That goes beyond a trade organization. To sponsor legislation to make buyer-broker contracts mandatory. So you're right, the buyer-broker contract, and I'm glad you've been teaching it because, again, I go back to 1991 when I created a course with 4 cassette tapes. Remember cassette tapes?
Dude, where's your 8-track course? I know you have a course on 8-track.
Yeah, no, this is a little bit after that, right?
Right. That was after the Stone Tablets course.
Yeah. So now it's finally, you're going to be required. And what that's going to do is that's going to make people who represent buyers have to confront commissions and
That's right.
negotiation of commissions and proving their value. So here's the big change. This is what this settlement does. It eliminates your ability to offer compensation to a buyer's agent through the MLS. Through
Dude,
the MLS.
I got to jump in on this. I'm just chomping at the bit on this thing. Hold on. I got to lower Tara's hand. Tara, lower your hand there. Whoever's on Tara's login there. Hold on. Let me just lower hand. There we go. All right. This is cracking me up. So first of all, I want everybody to type in the Facebook chat, not here in this webinar, but on Facebook. I want you guys to type in which MLS do you belong to? Just trust me. Watch this. Right, type in what MLS do you belong to in the Facebook chat, not in the chat on the Zoom here, just in the Facebook group, in the Facebook chat. Now watch this. Saul, years ago, I was a member of the absolute worst MLS on the planet, in my opinion. It's the Northwest Multiple Listing Service. It is not an association to own multiple, and that's why I think that's what causes them to be, or what's one of the contributing factors to them being the worst MLS on the planet. They are the most punitive. They are privately owned, so they're a for-profit entity. And the way they make their money is by finding agents. And it's don't even get me started on those guys. I mean, when I see around the country, I see fines of agents in the 25, 50, maybe even $100 range. Man, I've had a fine. I've had literally fines from the Northwest multiple in the 10, 15, 20,000, even $100,000 range. And I don't know why Tara keeps raising her hand, but Tara, quit raising your hand. All right. That being said, I love you, sweetie. All right. That being said, guys, here's where I'm going with this. There was a time, this was years ago, the Northwest multiple literally they came after me. They fined me because they said that I was required to pay the selling office a certain percentage of the commission that I charged the seller. I wanted to offer zero compensation. My argument was that it was a violation of the Sherman Antitrust Act to require me to pay a certain percentage of the commission to the other agent. Not only did they disagree, they fined me thousands of dollars. And why am I saying this? Because I'm telling you guys right now, as many complaints as I have about the Association of Realtors and about individual associations, and as much as I think that there are things that we could do better as an association, that I think the association needs to clean up, like all this sexual harassment garbage in the back office, and every organization of any size has issues they need to clean up. All that being said, guys, let me tell you something. The association and RPAC have done more for your career than you have any idea of. You have no idea how valuable they have been for you. And I just want to give a little shout out and have all of us say, thank you to the people of the association, because let me tell you, it's your peers. It's real estate agents that make up the association. It's real estate agents that run the association. It's real estate agents that have put their careers on hold to help you with yours. So my suggestion is give them a little shout out, give them a little thanks. Now, that being said, we've got some questions, Saul, and I want to keep going on this. There's still a lot more to unpack here, guys. But hang
Mike,
on,
let me tell you right now, there's
a
lot to unpack. And so that's one of the keys. And one in the settlement is that associations and MLSs have to educate people about this new way of doing business, and that you can't offer. And listen, what are you going to do today? Well, first of all, we're really not going to see major changes until July, mid-July. That's important to note. And you know all the forms you use, if you use your state forms, why mid-July? It's going to take time to adapt and adopt forms, right? And change forms. So it's not something that's going to happen tomorrow. What do you do today? You do what you've always done. You try to list and sell real estate, right? Right today. Know that the change is coming and prepare for it. The MLS is not going to be an offer of compensation, but you can offer compensation in other ways. You're going to have a written contract with the buyer. You're going to have your commission stated in there. What this is going to do, according to the Department of Justice, they believe it's going to open up, because a lot of buyers are going to hear about this, to new ways to be compensated. You're either going to be compensated as a percentage of the sale price. You might be compensated a flat fee. You might be compensated by the hour. You might be compensated based on the amount of money you save the buyer in the transaction. So there are a number of ways that this can roll. And so that's why it's so important, particularly, people are listening today that you coach, that they realize this ain't the end. This is the beginning.
Not only is it the beginning, this is a new beginning for those of you that are paying attention. Listen, guys, first and foremost, let me stop and let me back up, because I have a lot of people asking, hey, Michael, does this cover just agents, or does it cover brokerage, brokers and brokerages as well? It covers both. Now, that being said, assuming you are a member of the National Association of Realtors and have been since prior to 2022. If the answer is no to that, you may or may not be covered by this. There's a pretty good chance you're probably not covered by this settlement if you're not a member of the National Association of Realtors. So let's talk to you folks for a minute. If I've never been or am not a member of the National Association of Realtors, now what? What do the rest of us do? How do we, maneuver around this? And I would suggest that first and foremost, the number one words you need to embrace is disclosure. It is important that we over disclose. And this starts in two places. It's the buyer agency agreement and it's the listing agreement. In those two documents, you must over disclose who's being paid, by whom, how much. If you're very clear with everybody in both of those agreements and you get those agreements signed before you engage in any activities for these people, let me be very clear about this. Before you show homes, you need to have your buyer agency agreement signed. If you're not getting a buyer agency agreement signed prior to showing homes, you are at risk, especially if you're not a member of the National Association of Realtors. I cannot say this enough time. Look at Saul nodding his head. He's like, yep, I'm seeing those lawsuits coming. Guys, I'm telling you right now, disclosure is the key. Now, if you will disclose this, if you will make sure that you're doing everything you can, does that necessarily guarantee you're not going to get sued? No. Somebody could drive through the drive-through at McDonald's, spill coffee on themselves, and sue and even win. Somebody could break into your house, freaking get their in the process of stealing all your stuff. They trip, they fall, they get hurt. They can still sue you. It's stupid. Don't even get me started on that crap. But here's the deal. Go ahead, Saul. Well, hold on one second, Saul. What I want you guys to know is you can't prevent that. You got to do the very best you can with what you have. You got to move forward without fear. And that starts with being informed and doing everything you can to protect yourself while still moving forward. Go ahead, Saul.
Yeah, so you make it, for me, a great point, and that is disclosure, agency disclosure. Agency disclosure is the key to the buyer broker agreement door. Agency disclosure. So you're right, you should make your agency disclosure not before you write the contract, but at the earliest possible time, because it allows you to talk about fiduciary duties. Because one of the things that you bring to the table is the fact that you're a fiduciary, and you can explain fiduciary when you're explaining agency representation. So in California, 3 ways you can represent buyers and sellers in real estate transactions. 3 ways: represent the buyer exclusively, represent the seller exclusively, represent the buyer and seller as a dual agent. 3 ways that you can do that. So you make and you explain what fiduciary is and what your duties are. And they said, now, if you want me to be your fiduciary, the way that we do this, by law, it will be soon, by settlement, then by law, the way that I can represent you as your fiduciary is through a buyer broker agreement, and I would like you to sign the buyer. So it's a step. The agency disclosure is a step closer to getting, because a lot of people are afraid to ask people to sign a buyer broker agreement, and so don't be afraid to do it.
Okay, we had talked about that. So first of all, understand this, guys. I've been seeing this for years, and some of our clients have listened. I'm looking at Austin over here, and I know Austin has listened. I love you, brother. You're awesome. And his entire team has been doing this. But let me just tell you guys right now, it has been voluntary up to this point, but in a few states and a few associations, it has become mandatory in recent months. But I will tell you this. The time is very, we thought, again, it could be 2 to 5 years. It is very, very quickly coming, and it's going to be within the next 6 months. It's going to be law across the country that you are going to be required to use a buyer agency agreement before providing any brokerage services to anyone.
So you've got states like,
hang on,
you got states like.
Okay, go ahead and unmute now. Saul, you're muted. You got to unmute. Sorry, brother. I was getting
states like
noise there. Yeah, go ahead.
You've got states like Connecticut that have been doing it for years. But remember, the first step, this is a settlement. And this is between the National Association of Realtors and the plaintiffs in these cases. And one of the conditions of the settlement is that NAR require. And so if you're a member of NAR, you're going to comply with that. The next step is legislative. And I mentioned in California,
That's right.
the
It's already
California
started.
Association has already started, and in
That's
some
right.
states, it's already mandated by legislation.
All right, so I want to have you guys start typing your questions in. I know we've got a lot of questions out there in the chat, especially you can do it in the Zoom, or you can do it on Facebook. I'm watching the feed on Facebook right now. On my main page, if you go to Michael Hellickson on Facebook, you can comment there, and we will answer your questions right now live. But I also want to tell you guys, for those of you that don't know who we are, by the way, my name is Michael Hellickson. At one point in time, I was the #1 agent on planet Earth, listing and selling over 120 to 180 homes a month, closing over 120 to 180 homes a month, and carrying about 750 listings at any given time. And by the way, now I am one of the coaches in the real estate industry. In fact, I own Club Wealth. We're the #1 coaching and consulting company in the team and brokerage space. We've got over 65 coaches, each of whom sells more real estate than the people they coach. And Saul is a long time, very involved participant, both as a real estate agent and as a member of the National Association of Realtors, as well as local associations. Saul built this empire, this business that we know, right? Saul was one of the guys that really built this thing from the ground up. He's currently the CEO of the San Diego the San Diego MLS, and really knows what he's talking about. So feel free to ask your questions, but I want to start with this, guys. Understand this. This is a great opportunity for those that choose to take advantage of it. This is going to be a time where if you run forward, get your buyer agency agreement squared away, figure out how you're going to write them, make sure your disclosures in them, start using them with every single buyer. And by the way, Saul, a great question that we've got is, how will this affect appraisals? And then how will we offer compensation? I'm going to say this. One of the things that you guys need to keep in mind that's going to be very, very important as we move forward in this is, do not approach a listing agent and ask them to offer you compensation until you have a buyer agency agreement signed. That is very important. And by the way, neither Saul nor I are attorneys, and so we're always going to preface this with seek the advice of legal counsel. But I'm just going to tell you guys, you need to be very careful about asking for compensation prior to having a buyer agency agreement signed. Get that signed first. Now you're empowered to negotiate with the sellers. And Nicole in the comments. Yeah, Nicole, do you want to go ahead and put that to everybody? You sent that to me directly. Nicole Gaudet. By the way, thank you, Nicole, for helping us organize this today. It was last minute. It was very quick. So if you guys want to be able to comment in the Facebook post, there's the link to be able to do it there. And we're going to do everything we can to answer all your questions as quickly as we can. So Saul, hit the appraisal question first.
Yeah. So first of all, there's this ongoing argument in the real estate industry. We've had this argument for years, and that is, who pays the commission? And so people would say, well, the seller pays the commission. And then people who represent buyers say, no, if you don't have a buyer, the buyer pays the commission. And so who pays the commission? The fact is, if you don't have both of them, you don't have a transaction. If you don't have a transaction, you don't have the commission usually. So the transaction pays the commission. And think about this. When somebody goes out, when an appraisal is made, typically appraisals to fund loans for residential real estate, those appraisals are made without regard for whether or not there's a commission paid. So right now in the industry, when an appraiser goes out, they don't say, okay, this house appraises for $500,000. Oh, let's see, there's a real estate commission, so it's really worth less than that. That's not how it works. They don't subtract the commission from the appraised value. The transaction is really what pays the commission. Now, there will be some adjustments made. The lending industry has to kind of get used to this. But right now, the reason we believe the seller pays the commission is because that's the way it appears on the closing statement. That's the reason we believe that, right?
And I want to throw this out there too, because people are asking. I've seen several questions, and by the way, I'm really trying to keep up with the questions in the Facebook, and we're on my Facebook page. We're going to go ahead and we're going to answer all those live here verbally for you guys, but please put them in there so I can try and get them in order. That being said, I'm getting several people asking, well, two things. One, can I still put the listing commission that I'm willing to offer the selling office in my listing remarks? And I think, Saul, that's going to come down to again, the question of offer of compensation. And so I don't know the answer to that. What are your thoughts on that?
So here's one of the things the DOJ is after and what they believe. They believe, whether it's true or not, I'm going to get into this, right? They believe that agents steer buyers to listings that pay the most commission.
Yep.
right? I mean, we can argue about this all day long. That's what the Department of, I always think of steer and I always think of fair housing, but the Department of Justice says that what happens is you get a buyer agent steers people. So the way that you avoid steering is you don't include any statement about compensation to a buyer's agent in the
In the
MLS, and
listing.
then they can't steer, right?
Correct. I
Now,
100% agree with that.
so one thing that's going to be is going to happen is the box that says commission buyer broker CBB is going to go away. You're not
I
going to
think
get.
you're right.
So other people say, well, then you can put it in the remarks section. Now, remember, there's a lot of nuance about this. This is a 108-page document, and I've read over it, and I've talked to my business partner for years, who is an attorney, John Riley, wrote The Language of Real Estate, and we're kind of playing with this, and it looks like in the remarks section, you can say that the seller's willing to pay concession for closing costs as long as it's not tied to the payment of a buyer broker commission. Now that's going to, you have to hide on the sell side, but we're talking about the buy side now. So fiduciary duty is a powerful duty. It, right? The interest of your client over yourself.
Now, that being said, that does not mean that you should not get paid, right? And so there's a point at which, do we owe them a fiduciary responsibility? Yes. Are you still allowed to get paid? Yes. Are you allowed to get paid a lot? Yes. You are allowed to get paid a lot. Nobody can say, hey, we want real estate agents to only get paid this percent. That's not going to happen. As much as they would like to, that's not going to happen.
But here's what's going to happen. This is going to force negotiation. That's what it does. It forces, and that's what the department, they want negotiation for commission. It's going to force negotiation because this does not stop a buyer from asking a seller in the offer to pay the commission of the buyer agent. Now,
okay, hold on. So hold on. Let's back that up. So now we're talking two sides here, right? Let's talk the buyer side, and then we're going to come back. We're going to talk about the listing side because I had like Terry Bias was asking a great question about, can I still negotiate with my seller to have them offer a selling office commission? So let's start with that side. Then let's go back to the buyer side. Terry, to the answer to your question, the short answer is yes, you can and should have that conversation with your seller, but you should not offer it in the MLS. And the reason is because the second you offer it in the MLS, guess what's happening? Now agents can look at this and say, I'm only going to show the properties that offer the most commission. Now you put them in a position of violating their fiduciary responsibility with their buyer. Okay. And so ideally, in a perfect world, that will never happen again, right? And I really think that's coming. I think you're going to see offer of compensation going away entirely in every MLS.
No, it will. That's part of this. It's not going to be part of the MLS any longer because NAR is going to change the MLS model rules, right?
Right. Well, I'm even saying independents. I'm saying the independents are going to have to follow suit too, not just the association-owned ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So now when good markets hide a lot. And so in a normal market, if I were taking a listing, I would say to the seller, you can offer compensation to the buyer's agent. As a matter of fact, there might be offers that come in, might ask you to pay the commission of the buyer's agent. And you know what? You can do that.
So now, okay, let me jump on that really quick. So it's because this parlays into Kim Quintal asked a very good question. Logistically, how do we express that the seller is willing to pay the buyer agent commission if not allowed in the MLS? You don't. Let me tell you what you do instead. You don't say, hey, we're willing to pay the buyer agent commission. Instead, what you say is, seller is offering up to X% towards buyer's closing costs. The commission may be part of the buyer's closing costs, but it's just a part of. You cannot say, I'm going to offer this to this buyer's agent. You're simply saying, I'm going to offer this to the buyer, and they can use it however they want for closing costs, the commission, the title fees, escrow fees, whatever they want. Interest rate buy downs, whatever they want to use it for, that's their choice. Would you agree with that, Saul?
Yeah, and I'm not sure how it's all going to shake out, but as a seller let's say it's a slow market, let's say it's a buyer's market, I might want to make concessions. Geez, I remember bad markets, right? And where sellers were willing to make concessions. And so a good market hides a lot. So the seller could, and I think about it, not through the MLS, but could it be placed in advertising? Maybe, right? Don't know yet. This is all going to shake out.
Well, but again, Saul, I think we've got to remember the overriding concern that's driving that portion of this discussion. And there's multiple facets here. It's not just one dimensional. But I think that what we have to realize is that in everything we do as listing agents, and by the way, if you're not, I'll tell you right now, this is a great boon to listing agents and teams that carry a lot of listings. Okay. If you're a buyer agent right now, you'd better be on a team that's got a lot of listings. That's all I got to say. I'm
Hey,
telling you right
so when I talk to a buyer, I'm going to have to say to them, here, here's how I get compensated. Buyer, you pay me directly. That's not going to be really very popular, and buyers need every penny they got for the closing, right? But that's what I'm going to have to express this. Buyer, I have to be compensated. And the way I'm compensated is, number one, you can pay me directly, or we can ask the seller to pay my compensation, and we can put that in the contract. Now, when we write the offer on a piece of property and we ask the seller to pay X% commission, the seller could counter that. The seller could say, I'm willing to sell my property for the offered price, but not if I got to pay Michael this commission. I'll pay him
now.
half of that commission, and then I'll sell it for this price.
That's
Right? I
right.
mean, there's lots of stuff's gonna happen here in the next couple
Which
of years.
which again is so important to have that buyer agency agreement signed. Guys, I've been a proponent of this for literally over almost 30 years now, 33 years now. And I've watched agents. I remember back in the day, agents used to get pissed off. They'd get to closing, they'd find out that I, as the listing agent, made more than they did as the buyer agent. You know what? That's not my fault. That's your fault. That's because you suck at negotiating. You want to get paid some money? Start negotiating. Set proper expectations with your client up front. That's what you guys need to do right now. This is all about disclosure and setting proper expectations. Again, with the seller doesn't care who gets paid what. You know what they care about? What do I make at the end of the day? And that's the conversation you need to be having is how are we going to get the seller? If I represent the seller, how am I going to get you the most amount of money in the least amount of time with the least amount of headache to you? That's all they care about. They don't care about you. They don't care about the buyer agent. They don't care about where that money's going. They care about what's going into their bank account and how much headache is it for them. So let's take the headache out of it and do our freaking jobs. Now, I got some other questions in the comments here that are
So
really
before you know it,
good.
again, keep in mind now that the commission, if in the contract asking the seller to pay it, that's where some negotiation comes in. And remember, that's what the DOJ is after.
Well, and so you just need to watch this. Kim Quintal asked another question. I'm seeing her. She said, I hear there is a competing trade organization forming. Curious about this. I can tell you, Kim, there's already a competing trade organization out there, and it's called the DOJ, the United States Department of Justice. That's your competing trade organization. I don't know if there's another one. Saul, are you aware of another competing?
Yeah, I hear people talking about it, but I think it's egotistical and, to think that you can it's not easy to start a trade association. Hell, realtors, people complain about the fees they're paying right now. Where's the funding going to come from? What are the benefits that it's going to bring? How are you going to convince people to join and pay dues? Right. So this idea that there can be that's just in my mind, it's just so uninformed and arrogant of people who think they could create a competing trade organization. And in whose best interest is it really?
Yeah.
Right. So
Honestly,
I think that's a difficult road.
I think if we look at it, if we're being honest with ourselves, I think if we look at what just happened in the settlement proposal that's on the table, that's agreed by both plaintiff and the National Association of Realtors, I think that if we are really honest with ourselves, I think we've got to say to ourselves, hey, they did a good job on this. I think that at the end of the day, the Association of Realtors in negotiating the settlement has been beneficial to the agents. Now, that being said, there's a couple other things I want to talk about. So one, write this down, you guys. I'm going to coach you for just a second here. Guys, price is only an issue in the absence of value. Write that down. Price is only an issue in the absence of value. Now, I've been doing training for literally over 20 years on using literally a menu. So you'll use a buyer menu, a seller menu, or a recruiting menu. I've always been a proponent of menu-driven selling. Stop telling people what you charge. Start giving them a choice. Hey, if you want these services, this is what I charge. You want these services, you're going to pay this. You want my full meal deal? This is what you're going to pay over here. Guys, I teach class on this. We've got our listing agent boot camp coming up in April in Denver, Colorado. If you're not signed up for that, you're crazy. Nicole, if you could in the comments here in both the Zoom and in the Facebook post, if you'd be willing to put the link to that, Guys, you need to get signed up for Listing Agent Bootcamp. Let me walk you through and let our coaches walk you through how to develop a great menu, how to get people to want to do business with you. And oh, by the way, I can take, come here real quick. Austin, stand up. Hurry up. Come here. I got to show you this. Jim, by the way, we've got hundreds of people on right now. Look at this kid. First of all, I love the way he's dressed right now. It's his day off. Why? Because he actually takes days off. Congratulations.
Trying to.
Well, you're doing a great job, except for this webinar. But that being said, here's what I'm saying, guys. This kid right here, this kid's making more on every transaction than most of the people on this call. Do you want to know why? Because he shows people the options they have, they get to choose, and he stacks so much value on those options that more often than not, they choose his higher priced options and they pay him more than you're making. Why? Because it was their choice and because he showed them the value. You can do the same thing and we'll teach you how. Come to Listing Agent Bootcamp. Guys, this is a great opportunity for you to not only get more people to do business with you because you're explaining things to them that most agents won't explain, won't know how to explain, or won't do a good job explaining, and you're giving them choices. Go ahead, Saul.
Yeah, so your buyer broker contract, you're going to have a contract, and it's going to have to state how you're compensated. And
That's
so
right.
there are different ways to be compensated. You might be compensated by the hour. You might be compensated a flat fee. You might be compensated a percentage of the price, but it has to be stated, right? And so that gives, again, what the idea is, if this has to be stated, it's going to create an opportunity for negotiation. There hasn't been the opportunity, the premises, there hasn't been the opportunity for negotiation on the buy side. That's why these plaintiffs file the cases. This is going to open that up. Those people that pay attention to this are going to find opportunities to excel.
All right, Saul, I'm going to disagree with you. And I think you're going to appreciate this. And but I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think that's why these lawsuits got filed. I don't think that has anything to do with why these lawsuits got filed. I think that was simply the vehicle that allowed them to file the lawsuit. I think it was the one thing they thought they had the best chance of getting traction on. I think the lawsuits were coming, whether we had a commission discussion or anything else. They've been looking, and you know who wins in this? It's the freaking attorneys. Those are the guys that are winning this, and they're the ones that are the problem. You know, at the end of the day, they're the ones that are going to profit the most on it.
So here, I'm going to throw this out there. And so forgive me, Michael, if I'm breaching a confidence here. Go to thedataadvocate.com. That's my blog. Go to thedataadvocate.com. I believe that the reason goes beyond that. I believe that there are people, entities that benefit from the fall of organized real estate.
Yes.
And how does a single case like in Minnesota all of a sudden spread across the country to destroy what we've been doing for years? Who benefits if there's no multiple listing service? Google, maybe. Amazon, maybe. There's a lot to what's going on in the background.
Yes.
And so, and I wrote an article about that before the settlement.
You're right.
About 3 days before the settlement.
One of these questions, you are 100% correct on that, Saul. There's more to it than that. So it's not as simple as consumers are upset about our commissions. That's not what started this. That's not the story behind the story. All right, so let's go to some questions here. So I've been asked multiple times in the comments, hey, can we just put it in the offer instructions? Guys, I think that's a bad idea. I think it's a bad idea to say in the offer instructions, hey, if you want commission, ask for it this way. I don't think that's what you should do. I think instead what you should do is say, seller is offering X and your buyer can spend it however they want. And then you negotiate with your buyer for the commission. And if that's how they want to spend X, great, that's how they spend it. But if the seller's going to offer any concessions, make it a blanket. This is what they're offering. Again, not an attorney, but I'll tell you, if you check with your attorney and if they're worth their salt, they're going to agree with me on this.
So here's the big thing. You can't do it through the MLS.
That's right. And that's why you can't do it in the offer instructions.
Can't do it through the MLS, right? And again, this is 108 pages that, you know, you might end up selling the property for free a couple times before you figured out how you're going to do it, right?
Yeah. And by the way, again, guys, we're going to be posting that document on clubwealth.com. We're going to have a blog post put up. It'll probably take us till Monday to get this thing up, come to think of it, because a lot of my guys are off for the weekend. But on Monday, we'll make sure we've got the document up. We'll have a blog post with this video up as well. Of course, you'll see that the Facebook video will be up. We're also going to put it in Club Wealth University. We're going to make this accessible to you guys in as many ways as we can.
Hey, somebody just said, Michael, I don't work for free. Yeah,
good.
You might end up working for free because you might show a property thinking that there's a commission there and they haven't agreed to pay a commission, but you're stuck now.
So
That's why you need
Saul,
a buyer broker contract.
okay, hold on. Let's unpack that. Here's what I would suggest as a coach, and by the way, as someone who has probably sold more real estate than anyone on planet Earth that I'm aware of. Here's my suggestion for you. I would meet them at the house, right? I'm a huge proponent. First one's free, then you got to pay. But here's what you do. You meet them at the house, and before you walk through that front door, you get a buyer agency agreement signed. You check their ID. You've already run them through forewarned to make sure that they're not a pedophile or some sex offender or whatever that's going to kill you and leave you in the property. And then guess what you do? You get that buyer agency agreement signed, you open the door, off to the races you go. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to show value before you open that door. How do you do that? Show them what you do, explain the lawsuit, explain to them why it is legally necessary. It's not just you trying to force them, it's legally necessary for them to sign a document before you can open the door. Here's why. Now, which would you prefer, option A, B, or C? You prefer option B. Great. Sign here. Fantastic. Let's go look at the house. And then I'm going to show you all the other stuff for this for sale. That's how smart agents are going to proceed with this, and they're going to make a freaking killing. All right, Saul, here's some more questions. By the way, Nick Shivers, good friend of mine out of, and Austin knows Nick as well. Saul, I know you know Nick, good friend of mine out of Portland, Oregon. Nick says, Saul, aka Yoda. And by the way, I seriously saw one of these days you're literally going to have to paint yourself green, get the big ears, and seriously, dude, you got to do this. But he says, Saul, would you recommend implementing this immediately before July? Yes or no?
Yes or no is kind of that's a trap answer, right? So I would be looking at exactly how I want to do it. I'd talk to my broker if I work for a broker. If I'm not a broker myself, I'd talk to counsel, but I would be preparing to do that. If I'm an MLS, I would be preparing to remove the offer of compensation. If I don't use buyer broker contracts, I'd begin to use them. If that's the question, I would begin to use buyer broker contracts immediately.
That's right. And Rory says, Roy Tate Huberman says, in my county, if it's cash transaction, there's almost no cost to the buyer. So wouldn't 80%, or sorry, so 80% won't cover all the closing cost commission. So Rory, here's the deal. It's 100% cost to your buyer. I mean, at the end of the day, your buyer's paying for everything. Whether they're financing or paying cash for it, it doesn't matter. They're still paying for it. And here's the good news for you, Rory. Everybody's going to have to abide by this new landscape, right? It's not just about the new rules. It's the new landscape that we're all going to have to operate within. That's good. That's going to even the playing field. And it's not going to take very long before every buyer out there understands what's going on, or at least has an idea of what's going on, which means you having the commission conversation with your buyer is going to be the norm, just like it's the norm with attorneys. What do you think happened before attorneys had retainer fees? What do you think happened for them when that switch came along, right? All of a sudden now all the attorneys, you're not getting an attorney to sign on with you unless you have a retainer with them. Well, this is the same thing. The difference is they just don't have to pay you cash up front. They just have to agree that when they buy something, they're going to make sure that you get paid, whether it's this house or a different house, and you don't care which house. You're going to show them everything that's for sale. You're going to show them what's best for them, not what's best for you. That's what we're looking for here. And when you come at it from that angle, you and they win. It's a win for everybody. This is not something to be afraid of. This is something to be excited about. I'm so excited about this. You can't even imagine. And I'm super excited that the National Association of Realtors put some indemnification in place that allows, at the very least, National Association of Real Estate Agents, National Association of Realtors members prior to 2022 to be indemnified against future lawsuits on this particular topic. Saul, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would say look at who creates forms for you. In California, it's the California Association of Realtors. Most state association of realtors create the forms. I know in California we have great forms committee. They're looking at the forms, buyer broker. How are you going to make the buyer broker agreement better? And so look to your state association for the forms they're using. Learn how to use the form. The form is the tool to help you sell.
Okay, I got a great question here. I'm so excited. I love these questions, guys. I'm in the Facebook chat here. Trish Stevens Carter asks a phenomenal question. Sign calls. Buyer calls listing agent. Listing agent must show. Buyer refusal, because you've got a fiduciary responsibility seller, right? Buyer refuses to sign buyer agency agreement. We have to work for the buyer side for free, right? Are we liable from the seller's point of view? Let me give you a couple of ways you can look at this. Number one, if you are a team, my suggestion is you be a team and your buyer's agents take that call. Now, the buyer agent on your team does not represent the seller. Again, this is something you have to write particular language in your listing agreement with to ensure that your buyer agents can represent a buyer and not the seller. Very important. Talk to your broker about this. I can't stress this enough. Now, that being said, assuming we're in a place and that whether it's your association or your state or your brokerage that allows you as a buyer agent on a team to represent that buyer and not the listing agent, guess what? Buyer agent sets up an appointment, goes out there to meet them. You're going to get a buyer agency agreement signed. If they say, well, I'm not going to sign it, fantastic. I'm not going to let you in the house. I can have you work with the listing agent, but you can't do it with me. Now, when the listing agent does it, the listing agent, if they are smart, in their listing agreement said, here's the commission I'm going to charge. I'm going to charge X% commission minus, up to this much commission that you're going to pay to a buyer agent if we have to negotiate it out as part of the deal. That's going to be the big change, guys, or that's going to be part of the big change. Because yes, you're going to be negotiating that, but watch this. If they are not required to pay the buyer agent as part of that negotiations up to that amount, then guess what? The listing agent might actually get to make more money. And dude, I'm telling you guys, smart agents are going to think around this problem and they're not going to get blocked by it. Saul, what are your thoughts?
Well, an important point there is, what if the buyer refuses to sign a buyer broker agreement? Remember that first, this will come through, if you're a realtor, if you're a member of organized real estate, you're not going to be able to show property without them. So signing the agreement. So if they don't sign, you're not doing business with them. In certain states, and again in California, we know that there's California Association of Realtors is going to sponsor legislation to make it mandatory. So it won't be like the buyer says, I'm not signing, then I ain't showing. Right? Because you're going to have to. It's going to be the law at some point in California, and it's going to be a rule to belong to the MLS. And something else that's happening, just kind of remember with this settlement is, and it's no big deal, but it's in the settlement, and that is that if a commission is going to be paid, the party to whom you pay a commission doesn't have to be a member of an MLS.
Wait a minute. Back up. Hold on. Back up. So you're saying, so they do have to be a real estate agent, but they do not need to belong to an MLS.
They have to be a real estate licensee. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's against the law in most states, in every state that I know of, to receive commission or compensation for the sale of property unless you're licensed. Now, it used to be, believe it or not, if someone made an offer on a property, there were brokers at one time that would ask you, are you a member of the MLS? And if you're not, I'm not paying you. Right. But when I sold real estate, was active in selling real estate, I really didn't care if they're a member of the MLS. What I cared is they brought me an offer. If they brought me an offer, I was willing to, whatever compensation I had arranged, I was willing to participate and share that compensation. So there's a piece in this settlement about paying people who aren't a member of the MLS. I don't think it's a big deal. But again, this is a 108-page settlement agreement. It's got all kinds of things in it that we haven't explored yet.
This is probably more important than any of the pre-licensing education you went through. You need to read that document. That's much more important than the pre-licensing garbage you had to learn to get your freaking license. All right. Was that too transparent, Saul? I probably shouldn't speak like that.
Hey, I taught real estate principles and practices for 20 years. And what I always told people is, when people who told me you don't use the stuff that's in your real estate course, I say, if you stay in the business long enough, you're going to use it.
Some of it, yes.
I say you use it all. I say, well, I'll never use the number of feet, 43,500. I'll never use it. I say, until you go to sell some acreage, right?
I can tell you, I've sold a lot of acreage. I've never used it. There's calculators and apps and all kinds of stuff for that. That being said, I want to keep going. We have some great questions here. And so really, we just had, let's see, Nick, that website is clubwealth.com. Now, if you're looking for the website for the listing agent bootcamp tickets, you go to clubwealth.com/LABC. If you just want to be able to get the document that we're going to be posting there by Monday, just go to clubwealth.com and go into our blog. So you can go clubwealth.com/blog, and right in there we'll have the blog post on this topic. We'll have this video along with all the supporting documentation behind it, including the full settlement documentation. All right. So, okay.
I just saw a question, Michael, popped up. What about commercial agents? They're not licensed. Anybody who earns compensation for the sale, the rental, the lease of real estate has to be licensed to earn that compensation. Commercial agents, all the commercial agents I know are licensed.
So on the mortgage side, they don't need to be licensed. That may be the question that they're having. So you're not required on the mortgage side to do commercial mortgages, does not require real estate, or excuse me, does not require a mortgage license, but to do residential mortgage does. So there is a little bit of a difference there. All right, so that being said, let's move forward. Ryan says, I just thought about it. What about super lockboxes? Are they going to have to open up the app and now everyone can access them? So go ahead, Saul.
Well, first of all, there are two major lockbox companies. Super is one of them. Century Locks is the other. So it just depends on the MLS that you belong to. And so far, I actually had dinner with super reps here in San Diego 3 nights ago, and there's no talk of that. So the rules around showing, again, the big change is you got to have a contract with the buyer to show them property. That's where it's headed.
And that's going to happen for the listing agent too. Now, let me tell you again, another place where I think that teams that have strong listing agents are going to benefit from this, right? Let's say, for example, that buyer won't sign a buyer agency agreement with the buyer agent that goes out there to show the property. The listing agent, now, Saul, this is something I think that may end up having to get vetted in the courts. So it'll be very interesting to see how this goes. But listing agent goes out there to show that house. Buyer says, I don't even want to sign a contract with you. Then listing agent, if at that point they say, well, I'm not protected here, I'm not going to open this door unless you sign a buyer agency agreement with me. Is that permissible? Or would that be a violation of the fiduciary responsibility to the seller?
Well, so that's going to be real interesting to see how that shakes out, because remember, if you're the listing agent, you already got a fiduciary duty to the seller, and you have to try to sell that property. And if there's no compensation paid on the other side, what this could end up, an unintended consequence of this is it could drive, because I don't want to be working with the buyer on the buy side if I'm the listing agent without probably operating as a dual agent, because I don't want people to come back to me later say I thought you represented me. So this could actually drive, at least initially, more dual agency than people believe.
I 100% agree with that. I think that's a very, very likely, not just possible, but likely unintended consequence. All right. Now, another question. So let's back up on this appraisal question really quick, because I saw a comment earlier that, well, what if, in fact, I think this was Francine, or here was Ryan Lawley. Ryan's one of our coaching clients. Ryan says, hey, I've had a lot of low appraisals in the last couple of years. Baking compensation in the sales price is going to increase the cost of those appraisals. Or excuse me, it's going to increase the cost of the house, which may make it so it doesn't appraise. And so the reality, Ryan, is yes, that's very true. But the reality is those commissions are already in these transactions. And so again, the appraisers know this, the agents know this. Could it have an impact? Sure, you bet. But at the end of the day, it's happening industry wide. And so it's not going to just be on your listing or your buyer's transaction. It's industry wide. So this will work itself out fairly quickly. And, that could mean, the buyer, assuming that the seller is netting maybe a little bit more in the short run. It could be that the buyer is coming up a little bit more in the short run. It could mean that prices come up a little bit. There's a lot of unintended consequences that can come from this. And the only way we're going to know for sure what's going to happen is to allow the free marketplace to do what it does. And it'll work itself out. All you need to worry about is go get as many clients as you can, show them as much value as you possibly can, get those buyer agency and listing agreements signed, and let the chips fall where they may. Oh, and sorry, over disclose. Go ahead, Saul.
So I know Ryan, beat Army. And so here's what I would say. I would say that, again, the transaction is what generates the commission. The commission is already financed. It just, people don't think about it that way. And then remember, there's something we call the housing finance industry. And the housing finance industry is gigantic, and loans are made, loans are sold, loans are packaged, mortgage-backed securities are created. And because there's a change in the way that people who list and sell real estate are compensated, that doesn't mean that lenders aren't going to want to make loans. That doesn't mean Fannie and Freddie aren't going to want to buy loans. That doesn't mean mortgage-backed securities are going to cease to exist, that Wall Street's going to stop putting these things together and selling them. It's all going to adjust because there's money in this for everybody.
That is 100%. I'm so glad you brought that up. The sky is not falling, guys. And it's funny because Billy McLean just asked a very similar question. He says, well, well, hold on. Do we now have to say, towards, when we're offering seller concessions, do we have to say towards buyers prepaids, closing costs, discounting points, and transaction fee, and real estate commissions, and blah, 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 blah? No, just all allowable closing costs. Again, this is going to get worked out. The lenders do want to loan money. I'll give you a great example of this. Look at the investment loan side. So my daughter is one of the top lenders across the country. She's got the award, by the way. Shout out to Madison for receiving the award for fastest consistent closing times from United Wholesale Mortgage. She does loans all over the country, and they gave her their one national award. I was very proud of her. Anyway, that being said, Madison used to do a lot of retail loans. It was, there was a lot of retail going on, but I told her when she started in this business, focus on investors. Well, guess what? She focused on investors. Now she's doing a ton of DSCR loans. I mean, she can do the vanilla loans too, but watch this. What's happened in the last 5 months? In the last 5 months, because the retail market has dried up a lot, guess where the money's been? It's been on the investor loans. So guess what lenders have done? They have made DSCR loans and investment property loans super attractive, more so than ever before. We've even seen times where DSCR loan, that's debt service coverage ratio loans, interest rates have been lower at times, not for long periods, but for short periods of time. We've seen them even be lower than traditional conforming investment property loans. So what I'm saying here is lenders are going to find a way to loan money. They're in the business of making money. They can't make money if they can't loan money. They're not going to allow this to stop them from being able to write loans. Don't worry about that. It's going to be fine. All right. I'm so excited. What a great conversation, Saul. You guys are asking great questions. We're going to keep up. How do I see this moving forward with new home subdivisions? Saul, I'll let you address that one. Go ahead.
Well, new home sub, that's kind of interesting. People are dealing often directly with the principal, the developer. But I think that if they're not a member of the National Association of Realtors, the state association, a local association, that they're not going to be too much change in that area, at least initially. But remember, what we're looking at is legislation at the state level, and that's where you might see some change with new homes.
Also, I would consider this. Think about builders this way. When the market's really, really good, builders don't even offer compensation to real estate agents. They're like pound sand. We're selling it in-house. We don't need you guys. And then when the market tightens up, all of a sudden they want to be your freaking best friend. All of a sudden, they're not only offering compensation, all of a sudden now they're doing car washes, barbecues. They're offering all kinds of incentives to you guys just to get you to come to their freaking subdivision. Well, guess what? That's the reality of the free marketplace, right? At the end of the day, if the market's tight, they're going to find a way to work with outside agents. They're going to find a way to make that possible.
Yeah, and this proposed settlement doesn't preclude sellers from paying compensation, principals from paying. It stops it from being done through the MLS.
That's right. That's correct. Okay, now let's go to Dave Woodson. I freaking love my good friend Dave Woodson. Shout out to Dave. And he's been a longtime coaching client at Club Wealth. He asks, how is this going to affect open houses? Saul, this is a great question. What do you think?
Well, so the open house dilemma is a buyer comes unescorted. If they're escorted, it doesn't matter. It's not going to affect it. It's only going to be the unescorted, and that's where it's going to be, well, if I'm the listing agent, do I have to have a contract with the buyer before I show them the house? Or because I represent the seller, can I show them the house even though I don't have a contract with them yet? And so that's going to shake out. But I would admit, and then that could end up forcing dual agency that we talked about, right? So it's only open house. Now, kind of think about this. If I'm working with a buyer, I got to get a contract. Then I can take them out and show them anything. It's the unescorted. I say unescorted by an agent.
Well, and not only that, Saul, I think it also complicates the seller agent relationship, listing agent relationship, in terms of if that listing agent is holding that house open, there's a disclosure element here that, hey, I represent the seller, right? Now, I would suggest that, again, this is where I think teams have such a huge advantage. And you guys, look, we coach solo agents as well, and we love our solo agent clients, and we love helping you guys succeed. I'm just saying it's going to be easier for teams, because teams, they're not going to have their listing agents holding out those houses open. They're going to have the buyer agents holding those houses open. And so the buyer agent can represent that buyer, whereas the listing agent would not be able to. But guess what? Guess who's going to have the opportunity to have those hold those homes open? It's going to be the buyer agents that are on teams first, because team leaders are going to give those opportunities first to their buyer agents on their team, and then maybe to outside agents if none of their buyer agents want to hold it open. So there's an argument to be made again that being on a team is going to help you navigate this